Welcome everyone to our webinar on List Manager. I thought we'd start at the real basic level of explaining what List Manager is, and we'll slowly build up into all the range of things that it can do. List Manager is just another way of viewing the records you have in your system. If we did a search for vase and hit enter, so we can select all of these. And normally when we're going through each record, we can go one by one and see all the details and use the arrows in the top right to flip between records. Now, this is handy when you are in our wonderful demo system and you only have 44 records to look through. But when you start dealing with some of the sizes of your collection and you have thousands of results, clicking one by one through this list really doesn't cut it. And that's where List Manager can help. So to open this up, there's a button on the toolbar called List. It takes any records you have open in the background and puts them into a list view. We can see here that we've got the records 1 to 44, and it tells us how many records are on our list over here in the records box. Sometimes it can take a little bit to open if you've got thousands of records, but it will always tell you how many you should have. To select something in your list, you click on the numbers on the side. So this is something that can trip people up occasionally because you want to click on the actual text. But when you click on the numbers, you'll notice that the line is highlighted in blue. So List Manager has two tabs. One is for the details about the record, and the second one is for the picture. So this helps you scroll through and say, oh, that is definitely not a vase. So you can click on all the ones that you don't want. And when you click back onto the list view, you'll see that they've been highlighted here as well. So anything you click on one side will be changed on the other. If I wanted to look at these records, now that I've highlighted them, there's a couple of ways I can do this. One is that if I click OK, it's going to just open the highlighted ones. So I lose all of these other ones that I had in my list. The same is true for if I click on Window. If I deselect all of these and just choose one, I can use the Go To button to jump to that point in the list. So I haven't lost the rest of my list. I've just jumped to number 32 of 44. So that's the fastest way to sort of skip using those arrows and jump around. If I only selected one of those, like number 12, and then clicked OK, you'll notice that my list drops to just being that record. Unfortunately, this does mean that you'll have to do a search again, but you can also use something called File, Most Recently Accessed Records. So if you flip through your entire list, you can actually see a list of all of those records here. Otherwise, you could just do that same search again for vase and find those 44 records again. So we have our browse list of 44 records. And we know how we can quickly jump around in the list and grab to something much further down, say record 1000. But as soon as I close it or use any of these OK or window buttons, I will lose my list. And sometimes I need to come back to it at different points. And I might want to look at a small subset of records, but I want to be able to return back to my list at any time without having to search again. Vernon lets you save at any time and come back to it again and again and again. To save a list, there's a couple of ways you can do it. The most common way is you have List Manager open, you have your records you want to save, and you can go File, Save as List. You might notice that it says Control L, so if you much prefer keyboard shortcuts, you can use Control L to save your list as well. There's another option below that says Save Selected Items as a List. So if you didn't want everything, you could say, I only want these 10. And you could go File, Save Selected Items as a List. We want to save everything as a list, so we can click Save as List. This opens something called Portfolio. Every single user in your system has their own folder made for them. So you most likely have your own folder at your copy of Vernon. We've got, in this case, a login for Assistant Registrar. We've got a login for Collect, Curator, and Registrar. Yours might be specific people's names. When you want to save a list or save a report or save a search, it drops you in here to have your own folder. I can see previous lists that I've made, and I can also choose to save mine. So this one is a list of vases. So we might say vases 2021 exhibition review. So I've now saved it, and you can see at the top here that it's changed to having the name of that list. This means that if I ended up doing a search for P and I go into a range of other things, I can really quickly return back to my results by opening List Manager and going File, Open Saved List. It then drops you into your portfolio, and you get a chance to choose from here what your list was. So we remembered that we called it Vases 2021 Exhibition Review, and highlighting it and clicking OK is going to open it for us. You'll notice that we still have this list here, but behind the scenes, we have that browse list of those 2 B-Fly records. So as soon as we click OK without highlighting anything, this is going to take over that. So when I click OK, it changes to showing me those 44 records. You can also get to your list quickly by going into your portfolio up the top here, and you can hop into your folder and find that list, and double clicking will open it. If you decided at some point that you didn't need this list, so I'm looking through and I want to sort by list types, I double click on that type column and it sorts my portfolio by the type of thing that I'm looking at. And I could say, well, actually, I don't need that Crown Lynn list anymore. That's an old list. We can click on it, and there's a little X up here that lets you delete it from your folder. So sometimes when you are working on a list, for example, our vase list, you might decide that other people might have contributions to make to this list. So you can edit the permissions on a list or on anything in your portfolio. Highlight it, and you'll see there's a sort of cog wheel, and this takes you to properties. There's a lot of options you can do in your portfolio, but the key thing at the bottom here is access restrictions. Is it hidden, which means that other people can't view this entry, which might be useful if you're making lists of the most valuable items in your collection. You might not want everyone to be able to hop into your folder and see that. View only means people can see it, but they can't change it. And modify means that other logged in users can edit this themselves. You can move something between folders, highlight it, and use that cut, and then choose the folder that you want to save it in, and we could choose to paste it in here. You can also create folders that are at the top level, for example, exhibitions. And you can make this a space that lots of people can put their lists and searches and anything common to a lot of groups. So it doesn't have to be just under individual people's spaces. Again, really useful for your lists that you want other people to work on. We have our 44 records here, and I might say, well, actually, I need to share this with another list that we made, something we had used previously. I can go into List Manager, and I have all of these 44 items, and I know someone else has made a list as well for this exhibition. So I can go to the Records menu, and there's an option in here called Combined with Saved List. So this lets me put 2 lists together and merge them into one. So what it wants you to do is choose a list that you want to combine. Let's say the 20th century objects. And it lets you choose how you want to add it. So I find the Venn diagrams really useful for this. So if I choose or, everything's going to be included. And is only going to give me things that are in both lists. Not both, gives me everything that's not in both lists. And not in one, not an and in the other. So generally what you're wanting to do is or, right? Because you're wanting both lists together. But you can get very specific if you wish. But the default will be or, so if you feel like it, you can just hit that and click OK, and it will put through both lists for you. So we can see that my 44 has now had that 72 added to it, and we've got 102. That's still right because it has removed anything that is a duplicate. We can see some here that have no information whatsoever, and we could always look at cleaning those up later. But for the purposes of our report, we actually want to, make sure that this list is everything we want to include. So you can highlight all the ones that you don't like, which in this case are all of the blank ones. And we want to remove them from our list. Now you can hit delete on your keyboard one by one for each one that you come across, or under the edit menu, there's an option to keep selected or remove selected. I always tend to use the remove selected, but sometimes you might have fewer records that you're keeping and it's less clicks to just highlight all the ones that you want to keep. But I've highlighted all the ones I want to remove. So I'm going to hit remove selected. You can see that my records have now dropped down from 102 to 94. So if I wanted to add something to this list, you could either do that combine save list, so you could add a whole nother list to it. But let's just say I wanted to add one single object. So there's a couple of ways you could do that. One is you could find a new row and hit the insert key on your keyboard. Personally, I like finding the end of the row and hitting the down key on the down arrow on my keyboard. And this sort of gives me a new row, and this lets me search just like you would search and quick search up the top here. I could do a search for book, and it gives me a range of terms to look for. So you could use accession number, you could use a term, you can be as general as I have been, or you can be very specific with a number. So if I chose just that one, and then I did it again with, I think it was 2008.10. And when I hit enter on my keyboard, it gives me an option to choose one of those. If you have a unique accession number, it will just put it in for you. So you can manually build a list as well this way. So if I had a list of accession numbers, I could type them in. And so you can type in as many numbers as you need to make your list manually. So that's quite useful. I managed to open a blank list manager by opening a new record. So I don't have anything to open as a browse list to look at. So let's go and open one of our saved lists. I like to think of List Manager as its own mini report. It's your fastest way to getting an Excel report. So let's go grab that Vases 2021 exhibition review list. So I can make a report based straight from this. At the moment, it's going to have the fields object short summary and system ID. You might see something different when you log in. I can make a report straight from here into Excel. I can do this by going to the edit menu and down to copy to Excel. Now, in our latest version of 12.4, we've added a new option. So one is to copy to Excel with images, and one is to do it without images. If you have a version before 12.4, you only have the option of copy to Excel, and this will include images by default. So it's only in 12.4 that we now have split these into two options. So if I choose the copy to Excel with images, this is the most common case for everyone when you do a copy to Excel. It's just working on taking those images and putting them into an Excel report. If you have run this before on a set of records, it will be a lot faster because it's not trying to make those thumbnail sizes. So what will happen is Excel will open, and you'll see here that you have the columns that were in your list manager, and you will also have an image. So it's just a really quick way to get a report. In 12.4, you can do that same thing, but copy it without the images. And so this will run a lot faster because it's not trying to make those thumbnails. So you can see those pictures are missing. So this is another way. If you have an Excel spreadsheet, for example, full of accession numbers, or in our case, system IDs, you can copy each of those rows. And if you go back to List Manager, let's open a brand new one. We can actually paste those IDs into our List Manager. And I find the best way to do this is to use Edit and Paste. So when I chose Paste, it tries to find a match for 72. And it's saying, well, this one's a match. It's got the number 72, and it's asking me which one I want. Otherwise, it's going through and just putting them in. And I'll get a list of all of those objects in my List Manager copied from an Excel. Because sometimes people send us Excel spreadsheets with accession numbers or system IDs, mostly accession numbers. And so you can copy and paste them into here, and Vernon will do its best to match them. But you might have noticed I had to choose each time. That's where something called paste list quietly comes into play. So I like to think of this as, it sounds really passive aggressive, but paste list quietly just skips all of those messages. It doesn't know which one to choose, so it puts both in. So in the case that I had before where I thought it was the exact match, Vernon just assumes it's found the right match rather than checking with me. So in some cases, if it's 2 records that have the same accession number, it will put both of them in. So paste list quietly just sort of skips over each of those steps where it comes up and says, oh, is this the right record? If I head back into my list, so I can also go File menu, Open, Save List, or go into Portfolio straight away and find it that way. Sometimes I like going Open, Save List because it minimizes the types of results I see to just my lists. So if I have my list manager open and I have that object short summary in the system ID, there's another way of taking this information out, and it doesn't have to be by creating an Excel spreadsheet. There's an option called Copy Table. There's that option of Copy Table with headings and Copy without headings. So if I copied it with headings, I now have it sitting on my clipboard in my computer. So if I open up Microsoft Word, I can actually just paste what's sitting on my clipboard. So you can paste this into text files, you could paste it into Excel, or some other program that you're using. So it's just separated by tabs. So that's all very well, but that means you're only going to be getting reports that include the object short summary and the system ID. It limits you because you're not choosing what fields you want to see. It's not letting you see other parts of your data. It won't let you show, for example, who made it, or its brief description, or its valuation or location. So you can change your view of List Manager at any time. To do this, open a copy of List Manager. It doesn't matter what records are in there. You can do this with blank as well. And under the View menu, there are 3 options. The text view takes you to that list tab. The thumbnail view takes you to the image tab. But what we're really concerned about is that change fields option. This lets us sort of create our own report, our own view of what we want List Manager to look like. So we can see here that object short summary and system ID are selected, and we might decide that that doesn't mean anything to us. We can choose the accession number, the name. We could say, I want to see everything with current. Location, I want to know where it is, and I want to know how much it is. Obviously, depending on what you do, you might find other things useful like department, or if it has another number or related objects. But you can choose any of the fields that you normally have available for reporting. So it could be that you wanted to see who the artist was. And you can change this every time. It doesn't have to be a one and done. So when I do it like this, it's only going to change what I see when I have that List Manager open at that moment. There is a button down the bottom here that says Remember Fields for Next Time. And if you check this, this becomes your default. So every time you open List Manager, it's going to show you those fields. And you can change it in here, but as long as you don't have that tick box checked, it will just do it for that one-off time. So if I click OK, it'll change my report to showing me that. If I go back to the View menu, Change Fields, you can see that that box is unticked. So I could say, well, I want to see the department today, and I don't care about the valuation, but I do need to know if they have their object types filled in. And so that's changed my view again. And if I did a copy to Excel, it's going to take whatever I have in front of me and put that into an Excel report. So you can make your own report very quickly based on whatever fields you're interested in. If I close List Manager and then reopen it, you'll notice that it defaults back to including that valuation column, and it got rid of object type. So it's always going to go back to your first preference. We could decide to sort our report. I just want to see everything that has a valuation at the top. You can go Records and then Sort. And it lets you choose anything. So by default here, it's sorting by name and title, but I could decide that I need it to sort by valuation. Internal value latest as my first sort. And it'll take a few seconds to run through and sort everything, but it starts with everything 0 at the top and all of my values at the bottom. So another question that I often get asked is, what is the fastest way for me to find every single object in my collection? Because sometimes you want to report on everything in your collection, or you might want to start doing some stats or just get an idea of how many things do you have in your collection. You can do this through searching, but I find the fastest way is to open up a list manager, doesn't matter what one. And under records, there's an option for all records sorted. So if you want it in a particular order, and all records except current list. So you can get pretty specific about what you're looking for. But I find just saying all records, and then I can just, even before it's finished loading, I can see records as 275. So I know that there are 275 records in my collection. I imagine yours is substantially larger than that. There's also, list managers used in a wide variety of places. I find that when you are about to use a bulk tool, it's a good idea to open up List Manager, save a list of what you're wanting to edit, and then work from there. I might want to find everything that mentions the color red, just as an example, but you could do a search for everything for everything in your collection that's been made by an Indigenous artist. And I've got 18 results here. Now I could click finish and I could immediately go into a browse list and then open List Manager and then go file, save as list. Or I can use these buttons down here to go save result as list. Or you can go straight from here and go file, save as list. So you don't have to jump out of searching to be able to save a list of objects. I also find it really useful here if you've got a lot of search results and you kind of are like, well, I don't even know if I'm on the right track. You might think, well, I have to click finish and then look at the records and then decide. But you can use List Manager here. So you can actually, before leaving your search, open your results and have a look. And you might say, well, I know that the potato aphid isn't along the line of what I was wanting to look at. So I can go remove selected from my list. And I've got 17 results now. And I might know that that work is also not helpful, and neither is that one. So when I click OK, my search results drop down to being 15. Or I might open this and say, okay, I'm finding a lot of examples that are related to natural sciences. And I know that's not something I want to have included in my search. And so maybe your next part would be saying, okay, not department, not the Department of Natural Sciences. In my case, I manually got rid of each of those. It helps you to sense whether you're heading on the right track with your search. And also if you just want to remove one-off items from your search. So when I click finish, I will have those in a wonderful list for me to look at. So the last thing I'll show you guys today before we sort of finish up on our exploration of List Manager, we have a list of these red objects in our collection. And I might want to just see very quickly where they're located. So I could go through each line and make a note of all the different places they are. But for some of these, you'll notice that they're double ups. And when you've got a couple of thousand objects that you're looking at in a list, trying to go through one by one can be a bit intimidating and time consuming. So we have an option under the records menu called Convert to Authority. And this does act as a sort of breakdown of your collection. So there's an option down here called Location. When I click OK, it's going to ask me what type of location I'm interested in. In this case, current location. And what it's going to do is it's going to take all of these objects and transform it into a list of locations. So out of all of those 15 objects, I can see that 10 of them come from these locations. So I know that if I'm going to have to do a condition check, or if I did a search for something where I need to find these objects for an exhibition, these are the places that I'm going to have to visit. I don't know from here what objects are in each place, but I know that these are the ones that I will need to look through. I find List Manager is just a great tool to have a play in, get a sense of what's happening at a larger scale for your collection. It's really great for getting an overview, and the flexibility it just gives you and being able to jump around the data is just great. I thought I'd finish with one of our Easter eggs from the new version. So in 12.4, we've got an Easter egg. So if you have upgraded, you're going to have a bit of fun with this. In the bottom left corner, you can click into that sort of status bar. Normally it says ready, but in this case it still says maintain and view files, print or exit on my part. But you can just type RACE, so the word race, and all of the buttons on the toolbar are going to engage in a race to the bottom, and the system will decide who is the winner each time. So it does change. It looks like our go-to authority button looks like it might be a clear winner. But then we have our image one coming up quick. I think they might, well, the options button's coming out faster. And I think the image one's going to win. Let's see what it decides. The image button is the winner. So it's just something lighthearted and a bit silly for COVID years, I guess, is to have the option of using that Easter egg in 12.4. If you found that video helpful, make sure you subscribe to our channel to never miss an update. We post our monthly webinars here, and we have even more videos coming with our VUG panels and even more help topics. If you want to watch more webinars, click on the link in the video. That's it for the List Manager webinar. Mā te wā. See you later.